Yeah, so let's try that. All right. So, hello. Sorry, I'm already giggling like an idiot because it's taken a while to get this going, but it looks like we're actually firing.
I think we are, David. I think we're live.
Yeah,
Wow,
so
how
let's
exciting.
try that.
Now, I've got to kill my YouTube because it's kind of distracting for me.
Yeah, it is. That's totally off-putting now.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
nuts.
it's time to pause the YouTube. So, thanks everyone for joining us. This has been a bit of a technical feat to get there, but it looks like we are there now. So, it's lovely to be here with you. I
Mm.
suppose it's all part of the learning experience doing this. So, and thank you to those that have joined us, says David, not really understanding how many are here. Five! We have five people. Thank you.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for joining us. We weren't sure if anyone was going to turn up. To be perfectly honest, being the first time we did it, and we tested your patience by taking a good 14 minutes to actually make this thing work. But well done, mate, David, for getting it up and running because this was our first time trying it. And with new technology, there's always going to be a few little teething issues. So
It does.
that's
It
what,
does take a while, yeah. So no, we got there in
yeah.
the end. So yeah, again, great to be here with you. Oh, and there's David O'Malley's joined us.
Oh,
David, welcome.
magic.
So big hi to Tammy. We love Tammy to bits, and we've had a lot to do with Tammy.
G'day,
Obviously,
Tammy.
David very kindly provided a question for this first live stream that we'll be covering in a little while. So great
Thanks,
to have
David.
you here, David. So look, I hope you and Tammy are enjoying the very personalised live stream that this may be for this first one. But yeah, great to see you both,
Hey,
so
look,
to
this will
speak.
this will sit on our YouTube channel anyway, so people will
That's right.
hello to all of you people who are watching this, even if you're not here in the moment right now.
That's right. So let's kick off. I thought one of the big events this past week, Paul, was the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Now,
Yep.
the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I want to hear your thoughts on it generally in a minute because it is a very contentious both organisation and
Yep.
event. It cops a lot of criticism. It used to be said that it was a very it played favourites with who got in the Hall of Fame and who didn't, and to some extent that I have no doubt that's probably happened. But it just, I don't know whether I'm getting old and sentimental, but this week it really stood out to me just some of the amazing artists that were inducted. And obviously, the inductees this year were Carly Simon, Judas Priest, Duran Duran, or as we like to call them in Australia, Paul, Duran Duran. Have you heard that one before? Maybe you haven't.
No,
Yeah,
must
so
be a,
I've
must be a
heard a few.
Wollongong thing, mate.
Yeah, it's a Duran Duran. Um, Pat Benatar and Neil Giraldo, oh, I worship them. Eurythmics, Dolly Parton, Lionel Richie, and Eminem. Now
Mm.
that's hell of a varied lineup. Did you see any snippets? Because obviously you can't watch it. I think it's on HBO Max in about a week. I think it's about the 18th of November, and I think I'm going to attempt to watch that. But yeah, did you have any takeaway thoughts of anything that you did see?
Yeah, look, all I've seen is I think maybe something similar to what you've seen, David. Someone has filmed, I think, on their iPhone, a bit of the Eurythmics doing
Yeah,
their mashup, but look very cool. I think you made the comment, David. It almost brought a tear to your eye seeing the Eurythmics playing live and doing a great job, by the way.
yeah,
I'll tell you what brought a tear to my eye. I was looking at all the keyboards on the stage. I think there were three separate keyboard rigs, and it was bringing a tear to my eye thinking about the poor person who's got to pack all that stuff up and and drag it away. Look, I'm going to be. This is time to be really honest for me, and I don't know if this is going to be a popular opinion or not. I have very little interest in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and to me it's an arbitrary list, and I'm on various internet forums, as are you, David, and people get really caught up in this person should have been inducted and that one shouldn't have been. But yeah, it's an arbitrary kind of a list. The nomination and selection process is very, very, what's the word? Not transparent. It's very obscure.
yes,
So I don't get too bent out of shape about it, but I have to agree with you. If I look at those artists you mentioned, I mean they're all legendary. There's no doubt about it. They've all achieved so much. And just from a personal point of view, I was delighted to see Carly Simon in there. I'm a massive, massive, massive James Bond fan, and in my opinion, nobody does it better is the best James Bond song out of however many movies that have been released. And I'm including Live and Let Die and Goldfinger and all these classics. But in terms of a piece of James Bond music, I love that song so much. And I really encourage anyone who watches this who is maybe not as familiar with the stylings of Carly Simon. There's a clip on YouTube of her singing it live at Martha's Vineyard, and it is just stunning in the way the production of it is fantastic. It's live outdoors, looks great, sounds great. So yeah, I thought that was cool. It's nice to see Carly Simon up there. But I don't think you could argue with the inductees in the sense of they're all worthy of recognition.
That's right. Yeah. No, I agree. Even the diverse, like Eminem and Dolly Parton, doesn't get much more diverse than that. And you've got your purists that say, well, neither of Dolly or Eminem are rock and roll. But I tend to take a wider view that if they've been in popular music more broadly, then, good on them. I mean, you can argue that there are some rock acts that are well and truly still deserving of being there that aren't yet. And so, why are the Eminems and Dollys of the world being let in? But Carly Simon, just like, her voice is incredible. I'd forgotten about the James Bond song and obviously love her, huge hit singles. And the other one, and Tammy's mentioned there in chat, is aging like fine wine, is Pat Benatar. I've been a rabid Pat Benatar fan since my very first band at age 17, playing Hit Me With Your Best Shot and Fire and Ice and All Fired Up. And I'm still, to this day, playing All Fired Up in my band, Paul. 35 years later, I'm still playing All Fired Up.
How does that go over? Does that go over well with the audiences?
Yeah, it does. People still tend to like it. I think Hit Me With Your Best Shot's a better song, but we tended to avoid it. I think the guys in the band are just sick to death of it, so we haven't played it, whereas I think that's a brilliant song. But yeah, All Fired Up tends to go down well.
Yeah, well, we do Hit Me With Your Best Shot, and it's a guaranteed dance floor winner. For us, it's
so you guys play it, yeah,
and I love it. And I'm like you, I've always liked Pat Benatar. I've just always thought she's awesome and excellent, and she certainly has aged well in terms of still being relevant and really cool.
Great singer, yeah. And Neil Giraldo is, and look, it's a testament to them as a couple too. There aren't that many showbiz couples or band couples that have literally been around together as a couple and as a performing act for what must be 40, 45 years.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. It's a bit like you and I, Paul, 60 episodes of a podcast feels like an old marriage.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. And we're still getting along beautifully with each other as well. So that's...
Well, at least on screen. Yeah, at least on screen.
Like maybe not behind the scenes.
No, speaking of which, I got another letter from your lawyer today, which I haven't opened yet, so don't expect that I will till at least Monday.
Well, I just want half of everything. It's all you need to know.
Right? Oh, beauty. Oh, half of nothing's nothing. That's good. So, and Tammy also mentioned there, Dolly, and I was going to get to that too as far as the finale. Dolly in the finale and just her thing, she's written thousands of songs herself. A lot of other artists have performed them. And so on. But the finale was brilliant just because, again, the scope of all those inductees and the people on stage. And finales with large bands, it's a bit like the end of Live Aid or other ones. It can be a bit clunky. It can look a bit silly. And you know that there's no way the poor old sound guy can be hearing all of those people. But yeah, I thought Jolene was an obvious song to do. But it did sort of work, and who'd have thought you'd see Rob from Judas Priest and Dolly, duetting on part of Jolene.
Isn't music a funny thing, like the situations and artists and opportunities it throws together? And you think of those two duetting. There's been some unusual duets over the journey of music. So why not throw Rob and Dolly together to do Jolene? Absolutely. I couldn't help thinking of our friend Tammy, who's dialed in there, out where she is. There's a tribute act called Nudist Priest.
Oh, really?
That do Judas Priest covers completely naked. It's absolute truth in advertising. So they're, I reckon, the most wonderfully named tribute act going around. I don't know if they're any good or not, but and I don't think I would pay to go watch them.
Nudist Priest, that's cool.
Nudist Priest. So yeah,
very cool. And also, Giraldo, Tammy just mentioned, produced Jesse's Girl. I actually didn't know that, and I'm a rabid Rick Springfield fan, which I probably said on the podcast a few times. But yeah, the tear in my eye thing was about the Eurythmics. I saw all the photos in the lead up, and just
Mm.
particularly, I'm not sure how big the Eurythmics were in US and North America. I think they definitely had an impact, but I don't believe they were quite as iconic as they were in the UK, Australia, and so on. And just for me to see those two together, Dave Stewart and Annie Lennox together
Yeah.
again, was brilliant enough on its own. Let alone for those that get a chance to see on YouTube, I think there's still a couple of bootleg videos of them doing this wonderful trio of songs, like a medley of songs, which was
Yeah. That's the one I saw.
God, I've forgotten the songs now. For
Would I
Mi-
lie to you? It was the
yeah, Would
first
I
one, I
Lie
think.
to You? Missionary Man, and then
Yep.
obviously Sweet Dreams at the end.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And it made you realise, well, that's three of their great songs, but it's only three of about 9 or 10 that I was able to rattle off that were enormous hits, either locally and in the UK, and I assume some of them in the US as well.
Oh, yeah, well, I know, David, here in Australia for a period of time, they just dominated the charts. They just pumped out hit after hit
Yeah.
after hit. But the song "Talking with an Angel" that
Yes.
always blew me away. That her vocal at the start of
Yes.
that intro, it just hits you straight away. Talk about starting with just a bang.
Exactly. So.
Amazing song.
No, anyway, that was it was lovely to see, and I always am a bit fascinated by the inductees and the nominees, and you can debate them endlessly, but
Mm.
it'll be interesting to see next year. So enough of Rock and Roll Hall of Fame before Jan Venner sues us or something.
Sorry,
Again,
Jan.
big welcome to Dave, who's joined us live as well. So he had a great question. That posted on Facebook on the Keyboard Players in Cover Band group that Tammy's a moderator for, and a big shout out to that group. And we'll give a shout out to some other great musician resources as well during this live stream. So Dave, you said, I'd like to hear your thoughts on using laptops for live shows, running virtual sampled instruments to recreate famous sounds and being able to make patch changes fast mid-show. I know there's several pros who are comfortable with it setup, but there are always the risk of a crash at the wrong moment. What's your views, experiences on this? So, Paul, you and I have very different experiences with this, and I thought we might start with you. So, what's your experience with this?
It'd be way quicker to start with me. I just have to be conscious of this note I wrote to myself here before. Don't say anything stupid. This is live, so I'm just going to be careful. I refuse to do it. So this is just me personally. I will not rely on a laptop for my sound, and I can assure you a lot of top-notch players, pros, have no issue with doing it whatsoever. And you could argue that a hardware keyboard could fail just as easily as a piece of software, but it just doesn't suit my workflow, to be honest. I'm not really philosophically against it. I've just never done it. And I'm a bit of a Luddite, as David knows. I tend to be a bit of a pick and stick sort of a guy. If I find a keyboard I like, I don't sell it, I keep it. And if I find a workflow and a process I like, until it can be proven that it's really broken, I tend to stick with it. I will say this before we hand over to you, David, who has much more expertise and courage in this realm that I do. The absolute top of the line acts, a lot of them do use a software-based system, and without exception, if it's a big name act, they will have an A and a B rig. So they will basically have rig A set up with all their changes with sounds and what have you. And a lot of times with these artists, it's not just sounds that's being driven. It might be synchronized to a lighting show and click tracks and that sort of thing. So the whole thing's being run off a computer. And they will have A rig over here and a complete duplicate of A rig, the B rig over here. So that if A rig goes and just dies, B rig can fire up and can take over. So they have that built-in redundancy. Not to say that doesn't mean these things fail all the time, but it's just being smart when so much of your show relies on that computer functioning properly. And people are maybe paying $150, $200, $500, $1,000 a ticket, depending on the artist. Well, you can't be delivering a poor performance in that regard. So that's my sort of thoughts on the matter, David. But let's hear yours, because you actually do this stuff.
No, I think you used the word courage for me using it, and I think it does actually still require courage. And also a big hi to Darren from Radio Grande. We're going to talk about you in a second, Darren.
Darren.
Great to have you here, mate. Yeah. It does take courage that in spite of having a very good laptop, I'm lucky enough to have a MacBook Pro, one of the M1 MacBook Pros. It's fast as lightning. Mainstage is a brilliant piece of software. I still can never convince myself that it's not going to fall over at some stage during a gig. Now, funnily enough, though, the time I've had a rig fall over in the last couple of months has actually been the opposite, that my main board that has nothing to do with the computer
Right.
has fallen over, but not through the fault of the keyboard, but through to the way I'd patched its audio into my
I remember
audio
that.
interface. So yeah, that was my issue, not the keyboards.
But
So
you've
the
never had a computer fail on you though, have you, David?
I've never had a computer fail, but
No.
let's say in the last 25 gigs where I've had Mainstage on stage, there's been at least twice
Mm,
where Mainstage has crashed.
mm,
And once that I lost sound. So you go, I don't know how you've just mentioned the redundancy. So you usually have an
mm,
A and a B rig.
mhm,
I still am paranoid on any given night. For some reason, it's not going to work, which is why I have a two board rig. The bottom board is able to run without the laptop at all. I can select the sounds manually and so on. And then I have the top board as a MIDI controller with Mainstage. I love it. The sounds on it are brilliant. I'm about to be playing on an originals project over the coming
mhm.
12 months. It will like 90% will use Mainstage, including Mainstage running backing tracks. And so far it's been flawless. But courage, I think, is a good word you've used there. You've still got to have that courage to go, yeah, maybe this won't work. On the other side of the argument, if you set up Mainstage right, and this time I have, the first time I set up Mainstage, and I won't bore because if you don't use Mainstage, it's pointless. But there are different ways you can set up your instruments in Mainstage, and some are less processor intensive than others. And this time I've done some serious research and set up this new Mainstage set in a much more efficient way, and that's obviously is making a big difference. If it's not hounding your processor to death on any given minute, it's got to help it not crashing.
Yeah. Okay, so can I ask you a question on behalf of people who might be interested in going down this road? And you sort of mentioned that you've got a highly spec'd computer. What sort of specs should want my computer to have to be able to run things efficiently, to be able to run the maybe certain virtual instruments,
Yeah.
plus the Mainstage program? Because I'm guessing you don't want to cheap out on the computer. You want to get something pretty robust.
So some will argue, and I've said, so I'm on a group, I think it's called Apple Mainstage users,
Hmm.
and the vast majority of people that have these massive Mainstage rigs for use in musical theatre.
Right.
So, and that's quite intensive. So they've got a lot of different patches and songs, albeit it does tend to be a lot of piano and organ and stuff like that. But some of
Mm.
the more full-on musicals, they're dealing with lots of different soft synths and
Yep.
instruments. They are running that on sometimes 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old computers and running it fine. And
Wow.
they are the people that have really done their research and get that thing finely tuned so it's putting the bare minimum strain. You know, they're not running Omnisphere or Sample Tank in it. They're
Yep.
using, you know, the standard Mainstage instruments, maybe an extra plug-in or two, and
Right.
really finessing how they use it. So I'd argue if you've got an older computer, if you put in the time, you can absolutely use it.
Yes.
If you're lucky enough, like me, to have a new M1 MacBook Pro, you probably don't have to pay as much attention. But I am, as I said, paranoid enough. I still am putting in that time to make it as efficient as possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Uh, just one sort of other thing on this and this whole idea of the reliability, David, and hopefully our listeners will remember we interviewed Chris Norton a
mm,
while back, who is the keyboard player for he was with Zappa Does Zappa, and he's the keyboard player for Cirque du Soleil as well. And he was telling us a story, David, wasn't he, about how when he first got the job for Cirque du Soleil, because again his rig is not just running music cues, but it's running lighting and he was told by the I think the director that people can die if you make this up
yeah.
because if the lights go out when the trapeze artist is halfway through trying to grab something, so no pressure. Anyway, I had coffee with him a couple of months ago because he's moved to
Oh,
my
that's right, to
hometown.
Adelaide. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so we had a chat, and he was telling me. So I was asking him these sort of questions, and the redundancy thing. So he had this exact same setup. So computer rig one, computer rig two. He said computer rig two had a giant red button on it that you just hit, so that basically if A dies, you just go straight into B, and it just takes over everything. And then while B is going, techs are madly working on A to get it up and running and get it going again. So, um, but he
And
said
that's the
he
advantage. If you've got those techs, whereas in our case, like with me, when I had that issue, it was me literally playing with one hand and in my phone having the main stage Well, actually, it was the audio interface manual, trying to
Mm.
subtly read the manual whilst playing with the left hand to work out what was going wrong. So you're right,
And
techs. We need more techs.
in saying that, I think I'm underselling his role because I think he madly would have to do stuff as well to get things up and running as well. But yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I reckon I've been playing keys for I don't know 30 years and bit longer, and it's just changed so much. The technology's improved so much. I mean, the hardware keyboards have improved so much, but then the capability of software has changed so
Yeah,
much, and
yeah,
I think it's going to become more and more prevalent. And I can only see that software using a PC or a Mac to help you. I can only see it happening more, not less, as memory gets bigger,
yeah.
technology gets better,
That's
computers
right.
get what their capabilities increase.
And
You
as
know,
we
and you
get
look,
older, so what the main reason I use Mainstage in my day-to-day cover band is I don't use a lot of soft synths. As I said, I use it on the top board only, but it actually is
yep,
just as a MIDI switcher. And I know there are easier ways to do it, but essentially I have all the the MIDI CC codes set up so that when I click on um, Don't Stop Believin', and yes, we do play it, then it automatically tells my Modi X7 to change its patch to
yeah,
Don't Stop Believin'. Now, absolutely, I can do it on the keyboard, but
yep,
I don't have to go to two different keyboards and dial them up. It's just there,
yeah.
it's ready to go.
That's the real benefit, isn't it? Is I mean, MIDI's wonderful like that, but yeah,
Yeah,
using your computer system to do that for you rather than having to do what I do, which is button in between the songs and make sure you don't. And I have mucked that up occasionally. So yeah, there's pros and cons, I think, for sure.
yeah,
But I certainly see it's the way of the future. You'd be
yeah.
silly to deny that.
So, David, do yell out if you've got any other specific questions. Just mate, we've covered the substance of that. But yeah, so crashes we've covered. And as you said, the pros. But yeah, throw in any other comments, mate, and we're happy to answer them as we go along.
Violent
Um,
disagreements, they're allowed too.
Violent disagreements are good. While we've been uplifting, I thought we'd talk about some deaths. So, and this is not to make light of these two people, but
No.
sadly, as you know, a lot of us get older, and there are some iconic keyboard players that have passed away in the last week. So, as we do these live streams, I'll just pay tribute to those. So, there were two in this past week or so. One a lot of people know about, and one that maybe people aren't as familiar with, and that's Tyrone Downey. So I'm the first to put my hand up with most of this stuff. There's so much I've learnt doing the podcast, and I was unaware of Tyrone. So Tyrone was a Jamaican keyboardist and pianist, best known for playing with Bob Marley and the Wailers. Now, if you don't know Bob Marley and the Wailers, there's something wrong. But he also played with a whole range of artists from Ian Dury, Sly and Robbie, Tom Tom Club, Peter Tosh, Yasuna Dua. He produced one of his albums, just an amazing artist. So he passed away in the last week. So Vale to Tyrone. Just an interesting, and this has only come from Wikipedia, so it's not deep research, but apparently Grace Jones, the iconic Grace Jones, who, by the way, spoiler alert if you haven't watched the Weird Al movie yet, makes a cameo. Not It's a character playing Grace Jones, not Grace Jones herself. She released a single called My Jamaican Guy, which was unbeknownst to Tyrone Downey because he was in a relationship and not romantically involved with Jones, but he was the subject of the song. Now,
Mm,
there's a story I would love to know the answer to, which we never obviously will.
mm.
But yeah, that's just a nice little snippet of trivia. So yeah, he died on the 5th of November and he was only 66. So
Mm. Too young.
condolences to Tyrone's family. The other iconic keyboardist that you may have heard over the past week was Don Lewis. So he was a real pioneer electronic music composer. He died last Sunday, so the 6th of November. Um, Best known probably for, well, so on the most superficial way, he co-developed a whole bunch of rhythm units with Roland, including the good old TR-808 drum machine.
Mm,
So
mm,
even if that's the only thing he did, he essentially changed the face of music throughout sort of the 80s, 90s, and to today, really.
mm.
It's hard to argue, there's a few of those drum machines, but that and a couple of others is what formed electronic dance EDM, in the late 80s through to today.
Mm.
But he obviously did a lot more. He designed sounds, instrument voices for Hammond, Roland, Yamaha, and ARP. And he also developed initially the live electronic orchestra in the mid 70s to control multiple synths. And it was sort of a pre-MIDI sort of setup. So he sort of was a bit of a pioneer in that way. Designed voices for the iconic DX7, you name it. So that's a big loss. He was, I think from memory, around 81. I apologise. Yeah, 81. Yeah. So anyway, has that uplifted the chat? That's
Oh, it's good. It's good to
yeah,
pay
it is good
homage,
to
I think,
acknowledge.
to
Yeah.
these people. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Mm.
And just jumping back to David, David's done what we would call it supplementary question, which we're very pleased to do. So on the flip side, is there a decent alternative to Mainstage for managing patch changes set lists on hardware keyboard rigs? A while ago, I found an app called something like MIDI Patch Bay. So there are, David. I'm not going to. I'm not a huge expert on it, but on the software side, Mainstage is only one of a bunch. The big three for sort of using soft synths and controlling keyboards are Camelot Pro, Gig Performer, and Mainstage. And they've all got Camelot Pro, and we don't have a big enough chat for people to correct me at this stage, so this is a good thing. I think Camelot Pro is the one that is only on iOS, or maybe it's on Android too, but it's not. It's not on desktop computers, at least in the Mac world. Gig Performer absolutely is on Mac computers, and people love it. I tried Gig Performer and couldn't wrap my head around it, but that's just my way of needing to visualize things. And Mainstage, and then there are a lot of hardware MIDI switches. And so what I'd suggest is whether it's the musicplayer.com forums, David, there's some great advice on there. There's the Keyboard Players and Covers Band group on Facebook. There's a whole bunch of things that are worth asking the question. And from memory, there's one currently that's got a Kickstarter going related to this area as well. So there are some good hardware MIDI switches, and they go right back to, I know there's still some people, like Mark of the Unicorn, Motu, they have a whole bunch of MIDI gear that I think is still used by a lot of artists as well. And some people have held onto their units, more so MIDI interfaces, but have held onto them for 30 years. I'm looking right here at a Motu MIDI Express 128. I've got in my little home studio here, and I only bought it in the last 2 years, but it's just, yeah, flawless, works like a dream. So it'd be worth checking out Motu as well, MOTU. I'm sure you've heard of them anyway, David. And Tammy's mentioned too, whether it's a 2-piece rig or a 6-piece rig, it's been efficient with whatever you have, and that's true. Paul, I mean, you are in a situation with a touring band that you backline gear, so you don't. I mean, you sort of know at each gig what you're going to have, but you've had some, things change up. Sometimes they can't provide you what you want. So how do you manage that? That's one advantage of not having a computer.
Yeah, well, simplicity is the key for me. Although simplicity means I probably carry around a bit more stuff than I might have to, because although all those things are awesome for creating efficiency, we travel so much and we're in and out of airport lounges and moving gear around. We try and minimise the amount of stuff we take with us, because it all comes at a cost, which then inflates ticket prices, blah, blah, blah. We don't want to do that. So all I do, so the band David's referring to is a Pink Floyd tribute, Echoes of Pink Floyd, that I play in, and we travel constantly around the country touring. And for the non-Australians, Australia's a big country, nearly as big as the Canada and the States. Not many people in it, so you have to travel a lot to play your gigs. And what I do, I travel with a virtual analog synth, which is a King Korg, so all the sounds are programmed in, just hardware style. Then I've got a little workstation, a 61 key Korg Chrome, which is the little brother of the Cronus. And that's all I take with me. 261 light keyboards, one in each hand. They go on the plane, and I backline the stage piano, which gives you my acoustic pianos, and then my whirlies and my Rhodes. And between those three keyboards, I get an acceptable sound. I mean, the 261s are exactly the same everywhere. With the stage pianos, it can be a little bit hit and miss. My preferred keyboard is the one I own, which is an SV1, which is brilliant for doing the Rhodes particularly, and it's got a very nice whirly as well for Pink Floyd stuff. But I can't always get those when I travel. I tend to get a lot of Rolands, David.
I've noticed that. When I came and saw it, was the one RD, it's a 200, 2000, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I get a lot of Roland RDs, and at one point, Roland must have done incredible deals on these things with backline companies all around Australia. So I'm getting quite familiar with the UI on the Roland RD, and they're good pianos. They've got a nice action, and they play well, but depending on what one you get, some sound better than others. And I have limited time to go in and tweak the sounds to perfection But I think sometimes, again, I don't know if this is a controversial opinion. I think sometimes the absolute minutiae of dealing with sound design sometimes pleases us as keyboard players a lot more than 90% of your audience would even notice, especially when they've had a few drinks, right? But
Yeah, that's right. No, couldn't agree.
but coming
You,
back to where you started, there's very little automation in what I do. It's very manual, and
yeah,
that's deliberate because it's one less point of failure when there's enough stuff that we
that's
have to
right.
sort of deal with as we're touring around. But that's not the only way; it's just our way.
Yeah, no, I think you raise a good point about we get more obsessed by sounds than the audience do. I mean, there are some iconic things you want to try and get right, and I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
for example, in my current covers band, we play like pretty much every cover band in the world, "Living on a Prayer" by Bon Jovi. Those that listen to the podcast will know we had Francis Capistrano from Narf Sounds on the show a while back. Now, Narf Sounds do brilliant jobs of sound packs, and no, Francis is not sponsoring us.
No,
And
no,
I bought
he's
one
just
of the
good.
packs, and the "Living on a Prayer" talk box samples from the original track are on there, and it makes that song, right? So we do a decent job of playing it, but being able to have those whoa bits at the start, stuff like that really does count as far as
Oh, you've got to hit your
authenticity.
iconic sounds.
Yeah, you got to
Yeah,
hit your
that's
iconic sounds. But aside from things like that, even like Jump, as long as you have a good sawtooth brass sort of sound, you can get Jump on pretty much any keyboard, stuff
of
like
course you
that.
can.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
but you're right. Otherwise, you can be a little bit obsessed.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, exactly right. But of course you want to make it sound as it should too. So it's just I'm always on about the diminishing returns, and once you get to here and you're at 90%, if they're getting the extra 10% is going to take you 1,000 hours, I don't know
that's
that's the
right.
best use of your time,
No,
especially in a professional environment. So that's probably all I'd say there. But we also have to be inspired by sound, so we deliver our best possible performance too. So that's totally
yeah,
acknowledged and
no,
understood.
agreed.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
and Yeah, David just said I'm prone to overthinking these things, aren't we all, David?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so no, glad you found.
We're keyboard players.
Yeah,
We overthink everything.
exactly. No, glad you found that useful. And speaking of there's also a question there from I said Darren from Radio Grande. So I'll for transparency, Darren's. I'd like to think we're friends, Darren. We've only known each other a couple of months, but Darren and I have run across each other locally, and Darren is part of an amazing outfit called Radio Grande. They're on YouTube. Do give them a check out. They do these wonderful funk and soul reimaginings of iconic songs. There's, I think, 6 or 7 of them on the channel so far, and lots more to come. Darren's asked the question, Paul, where'd you get the Volpec t-shirt from?
My son bought it for me online. So I'm a big Wolfpack fan. I love them. And I don't know. I'm sure you've checked it out. If you're into them, the Madison Square Garden concert, they film from on the stage. Wow, what an experience as a musician to watch a concert like that.
Yeah,
My son bought it for me for my birthday last year because he's a good lad and he knows I'm into it. And I think he just went. I think they've got an online shop. I think if you go onto their website,
okay.
you can buy their merch online. So I'm pretty sure that's where he got it from. So
Um, and
yeah.
just you've brought up a really interesting. So you've said Wolfpack, and I totally get how that probably is the proper pronunciation. So are they formerly known as Wolfpack?
Well, my understanding of the story, and you have to, with these guys, what you have to understand is
Yeah, a bit
everything they
zany.
do,
Yeah,
their tongue is firmly planted in their
yeah,
cheek the whole time. Like these guys just take the piss 100% of the time. So, but their interpretation, as I understand it, is they imagine themselves as being like, imagine we were like this obscure German rhythm section that were like a modern version of the Wrecking Crew that used to exist in the States in the
yeah,
in the 60s and the 50s. And so the idea is they're the wolf pack, but they're German, so they're the wolf pack. And so I think the idea is it's wolf pack pronounced by someone with a German accent. So I think
yeah.
that's
That's
kind
cool.
of the shtick that sits behind that. But I don't really know, and I suspect if you asked the band members themselves, you get 5 different answers because
Yeah, that's right.
they are characters,
No, they
no
are.
doubt about it.
And
Yeah.
if you haven't seen any of the YouTube videos, it is well worth a look. It's a bit like watching Snarky Puppy. The music may not be totally up your alley, but the way they play and their thing.
Like I said, that Madison Square Garden concert, which you can watch in its entirety on
Yes,
YouTube, just if you're a musician, do yourself a favour because it's the point of view is on stage. So they've got a guy with a steady cam roaming around. He's actually one of the musicians. He plays in a couple of the songs, and he's roaming around the entire time, filming the audience, filming like band members from the side. It's just a really unusual way to view a concert, but it gives you the feeling you're on stage with them, which
That's
is
right.
amazing, and it deepens your appreciation for their musical ability, which is through the roof. I mean, they're all
That's right.
music
No,
college students.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Now I'm laughing too because in the chat we've had Mr. Matthias Vilgluk, and I'm sure I've mangled that, but I know who Matthias is, and he said who would use obscure German references in their stage names. So lovely to have you here, Matt. I'm going to keep the mystery about you. I won't say who you are, but it's lovely to have you here. And Matthias is actually a wonderful ambient artist. I do recommend, if you see his name, do look him up on Spotify. I think Matthias, you put a lot of your stuff on SoundCloud or Bandcamp. I've lost track now. Sorry. But some of it's on Spotify, and I know I play it regularly, so well and truly. But yeah, nice comment, Matthias.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Herr Vilgluk.
Yeah.
Yes, he's an amazing ambient artist, and definitely check him out, guys. He's great, and as are you, David. You're not going to mention yourself, so I'll do it for you. So David releases some amazing ambient music that he writes himself under the name of Stainless Fields.
And can I say copper bagging for that name? And I feel the need to explain. So it's based on a poem from Philip Larkin. I've just aggregated two words. But one of my good friends, Rusty, who I'm in the band with, he refers to it as like stainless pants or stainless undies, stainless underwear, which sort of takes a lot of the mystique out of the title.
Doesn't quite have the same punch, does it? No. Well, it does, but in a different way, maybe. Yeah.
Oh, and Batiste just say his stuff's on YouTube. It is too. That's right. You've been putting a lot on YouTube, so do check that out. So yeah, Matthias and I are both ambient fans, and that's from growing up, and in my case, listening to Jean-Michel Jarre and Andreas Vollenweider of all people, who some people may not have heard of, but he's an iconic harp player from Europe that released a whole bunch of albums in the 80s and 90s that were sort of new agey / ambient stuff as well. So yeah, anyway, enough talk about ambient, because that is a surefire way to have people drop off, unless you like it. It's a bit like that awful prog music, and thankfully Matthias is not into prog. So the other things I thought we'd cover is Tammy had a great question that I'm going to cover in a sec too, but I just thought I'd quickly tease the podcast. Obviously, Paul, we're 60, well, in our mind, we're 62 episodes in. So 60 episodes have been released, and we're we just recorded another two-parter. It was last week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And that was with the brilliant Jason Miles. So we'll talk more about him in the show, but Jason has done some amazing work with Luther Vandross. Just to name one, I'm having a mental blank. It was Luther Vandross and Miles Davis, of course. How could I forget Miles Davis?
You probably haven't heard of him. He's just some bloke who played the trumpet. But
Trumpet,
anyway, apparently he's pretty good.
Yeah, so it can't. Oh, there you go. Rusty Guitars is on. Rusty, you just heard me mention you, hopefully. So Stainless Undies lives on. So yeah, Jason Miles was a great guest, and so we're releasing the first of two parters. We've had a couple of questions not on chat here, but we seem to be merging into two parters, and there's a reason for that. We've always taken the view of not rushing our guests, and they do have some interesting stories, but we just happen to have had guests that have been particularly prolific or had long careers, and we just can't bring ourselves to leave half of it on the cutting room floor. So what we're doing is we're doing two parts because we think it's worth it, and we get lots of feedback, people loving. So I think we've done 4 two-parters now, Paul. So we had David Matthews from Santana and Tower of Power, and then we had
David
Rosenthal from Billy Joel and a whole bunch more. And then obviously Bobby Cressy, the baseball playing organist who does a whole bunch more than that. And now Jason Miles. So
and look, some of our guests are quite loquacious too. So you'll ask them a question and they're off to the races with a story. And as David just said, we don't like interrupting them because they're interesting stories. I mean, the whole reason we invite them on is to tell their story. And what we hope comes across with the podcast is it's never about the what me and David want to talk about. It's about just giving just enough of a bit of structure, so that then the guests can tell their story, and we can learn from them, and learn what makes them tick and what drives them, and hopefully get a little bit inspired in what we do. And so we're really happy to just let it flow, aren't we? And if they're more the type who 40 minutes will wrap it up, that's fine. And if they're more the type that they've got so much they want to share, as you said, David, we don't like to sort of cut out big chunks of what they say if just to fit it into a format. I mean, who cares? That's
right.
the beauty of doing it this way, right? So
Yeah, exactly. So that Jason Miles episode 61 part 1 will be out in the next couple of days. And then we've got a few I don't like jinxing it by mentioning guests that we haven't actually started recording, but
I know what you're going to say.
I know. I don't want to jinx it, but I'm going to say, because it is a bit exciting. It's nearly been 12 months in the making, and it isn't confirmed yet, so it may not happen. But we've certainly had an indication of interest in attending an interview from Mr. Ben Montench from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Now, to me, and a lot of keyboard playing musicians, particularly in the rock field, that's one of the bucket list guys. Like for me, if it was Roy Bittan from the E Street Band, Ben Montench, and probably someone played with John Mellencamp. As far as American rock, they'd be my big three. So I am counting chickens before the hatch, but we are hopeful early in the new year of having Mr. Tench on the show.
Just cross everything for us.
Cross everything for us. Yeah. So anyway, I just thought I'd tease those two, and we'll also and Tammy, I know you're very much representing the female gender here. We do actively look. Please be assured, for those watching this after the live chat, we regularly actively look for non-male, middle-aged, white keyboard players. Like we do, like honestly do. We're very keen on a bit of diversity and variety. I've got a couple of inquiries in with some amazing people, different variety of genres and genders and so on. So yeah, it just sadly, it appears, Paul, about 90% of keyboard players, particularly working live,
pale, male and stale.
Pale, male and stale.
Yeah, exactly right. And we're very conscious of that, Tammy. It's we talk about it all the time, that we'd love to increase the diversity profile of our guests, but so we don't really target any particular type of keyboard player. It's just who we can get, who we think has an interesting story to tell. But we definitely will keep approaching some of those amazing female. And look, some of our best interviews have been with female keyboard players.
I was about to say, in our top 3, Lisa Coleman from Prince is one of the most listened to podcasts, and I wish we'd started video before we interviewed her. But
me too.
It's still one of the most listened to shows that we've ever done, and she was amazing. I've had a mental blank, and I've just seen her on social media the past week. The wonderful synthesizer person who I think I might have done that one solo, Paul. Lisa Belladonna.
Yeah,
Lisa Belladonna. Like she's amazing. That's another very popular one. Like we Veronica Lewis, the sort of New Orleans style honky tonk piano player, young woman who'd be only, I reckon she'd be only 21, 22 now. She was amazing. So we definitely try. And I'm Ellen Reid from Crash Test Dummies.
The Ellen was also one of my favourites, and the reason why was her absolute sense of vulnerability that she shared with us. She was so brave. And I don't mean that in a condescending way. I mean just in terms of being brave around being really honest about the anxiety that goes with performing live, and how that can impact anyone, even someone who's achieved what she has and is a brilliant player. So I really enjoyed that because she was so open with us and our listeners. So it was very cool. Right. So we'll definitely keep chasing the female and also not non-white Anglo artists as well.
That's right.
We really don't mind where they're from.
And we also, after a mix of experience, we're very happy to not have, they don't have to be famous and whatever. And we do try and mix that up a bit as well. Just interesting players. So it's their story.
Yeah.
And just to pull back the curtain, mate, we quite often get people that will pitch us to come on the show, and there are some that we agree. There haven't been a lot, but I could tell you over the last 10 episodes, about 2 of those guests actually approached us. And then there are some that you go, look, if we were putting out a podcast today, I would love to speak to you, but we also look for that interesting story wherever we can. And like, I don't, not everyone has.
That's so true, David. I mean, we're lucky in that we've got to the point where we don't always have to chase guests. They will come
No.
to us now, which is a really nice thing. And we have to be wary. Occasionally people can maybe try and use it as a marketing tool,
Yes.
and that's okay if they've also someone that we think will be really interesting to our guests and all the rest of it. But we really want to deliver quality in terms of a
Yeah.
great story and someone interesting. So
And we also take very seriously our listener suggestions. So I have a
yep.
spreadsheet with all the potential guests that have been suggested by you, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, via email, or whatever. And so please be assured, if you're watching this after the fact or live, that if you make a suggestion, we will try and make it work. We also just get a lot of non-responses. There's someone I'm trying to think of in the last 2 weeks that I've tried to contact. You just don't hear back. It tends to be you don't tend to hear back from their manager or PR person. It tends to be harder at that upper end. But then there are exceptions to the rule of, messaging Steve Piccaro's page from Toto on Facebook and him replying within 5 minutes going, yeah, I'd be happy to do that. So
Yeah.
it's everyone's different. But we do try.
I think you're right, David. I think a lot of the times, if we could connect directly with the artist, they go, "Yeah, I'd love to do that." But
That's
I think
right.
their managers act as gatekeeper, and so we sometimes
Exactly.
miss out on those opportunities.
And Matthias just mentioned Rachel Flowers. So Matthias, we're definitely onto that one. I haven't
Mm.
actually approached her management direct, but funnily enough, after 1 hour of our interviews, and I think it was Christopher Norton that you just mentioned,
I think
Paul,
it
wasn't it?
was.
That were Rachel, because he was on stage with Rachel. Rachel's mum posted on the Facebook video saying thanks for the interview, and and I sort of messaged her saying we would love to have Rachel on the show, but we haven't been able to nail down a management contact. So yeah, we'd love to have her on. She's amazing. So there we go. And then, and Tammy just said David Rosenthal gave you the best compliment that many of his peers, you've already interviewed them. Yeah, that was nice when he said we've interviewed a lot of the ones that he would like to hear interviewed. And yeah, he did do his research. I think that's why he's so successful, Tammy, is he's just really switched on and make sure
Wasn't
he
he a
knows
gem?
his subjects. Yeah, he was
He was
great.
a gem. He's so good to talk to. Super pro guy.
So, and then I thought we'd do one more question because we don't want to drag this on for everyone for hours. You people have a life. We don't, but you do. So Tammy has posted in Facebook a whole bunch of great questions, and we'll come back to them. I'll be cutting and pasting them into future running sheets to keep coming back to and dipping into. But the one I liked for tonight is, what band would you love to play keys for? So I'd love to hear from our people in chat. So Matthias, Darren, David, Rusty, if you're still there, what, and it doesn't have to be keyboards, but what if you play a different instrument, which I know Darren and Rusty do? What band, if you could only choose one band,
Yeah.
would you play with tomorrow? Paul, over to you for your suggestion. I haven't actually thought about this.
Look, again, I haven't either, so I'll probably answer and then go, gee, I should have said this, I should have said that. I'm going to say Santana.
Wow.
I really love that music, especially their sort of late 60s to early to mid 70s period. Really love that music and the vibe. Big Greg Rowley fan. So I would love to, if that'd be a dream for me to play that music. How about you, David?
I don't actually know.
I don't say this on the podcast, but the obvious one would be the E Street Band. But I just think I'd be so racked with lack of confidence and actual lack of ability, I wouldn't be able to pull off a show with the E Street Band. But I
didn't say I'd be good enough to play with Santana. I just like to play with Santana. Let's be very, very clear.
Yeah. All right. So let's say, I'll say that. I'll say the E Street Band.
I think for those answering in the chat, ability's not a barrier. It's just who would you love to play with?
And David O'Malley just said Jamiroquai, or that needs some practice for. Yeah, look, that's a great one, actually, David. And as you know, we interviewed Matt Johnson from Jamiroquai. And again, if you do subscribe to keyboard related YouTube channels, Matt's is one of the go-to ones. He does some amazing stuff on there, both tutorial related stuff and just what he does. Really nice guy and
He's
amazing
super interesting
on YouTube. Yeah. So yeah, Jamiroquai. Yeah, so you like the funk, David? I don't blame you. That's a good thing. And Matthias is saying, given my current interest, I'd go with either Elder or Zombie. So for those of you that didn't pick up the joke about prog, we know Matt's a major prog fan, and we're sort of giving away the fact that Matt has actually been on the show before. So and I'm showing my English, but I'm assuming Elder or Zombie are prog bands, Matt. Sorry if they're not. I'm pretty sure they are.
With names like that, how could they not be?
Yeah. There's another whole discussion. Elder reminds me of Kiss's The Elder, which is considered one of their most execrable albums, but I actually quite liked it. So there you go. I think we're done, Paul.
What about Tammy? Tammy asked the question.
Tammy,
What's
come
her
on.
answer? Who would you
Even if
play
it's a
with?
triangle, glockenspiel, doesn't matter what you're playing.
Yeah.
Well, what band would it be? And you can't say Shagwa.
Or
Not there's
Nudist
any
Priest.
Shagwa, a great Canadian band, but I think you can go even higher than that.
You can't say Nudist Priest either, Tammy. You've got to go
No,
a bit more
well,
high
not
ground.
Nudist Priest.
Can't say Nudist
Oh,
Priest.
Gino's here. Oh, Gino, it's a pleasure to have you here. That's brilliant.
G'day, Gino.
Yeah, so Gino's a legend, and Gino is based out of Sydney. Gino, we've got to catch up for a beer one day. So, yeah, Gino, that makes 5 of us. I wish I was good enough to play with Toto. Yes,
Oh,
I couldn't
yeah,
agree
totally.
more.
Yeah, I've never met Gino face to face. We'll have to.
Neither have I,
We'll
yeah.
have to try and next time I'm in Sydney, David, we'll have to try and catch up and.
That would be
have a-
great.
have a
Yes.
beer
So
or
no,
three,
great
hey?
to have you on here, Gino. I didn't realise you joined. That's excellent. And yeah, the Eagles from Tammy. Yeah, that would be another great one. And you could get away with some glockenspiel or triangle in the Eagles. A bit of triangle in Hotel California probably would
I
work.
reckon that'd
Just
work.
a nice rhythmic. Yeah.
Behind the 4-part harmonies there, it'd be
Yeah.
just beautiful.
Work beautifully. So, yeah, good stuff. Good suggestions, folks. And please post in comments for those listening to after, whether it's guest suggestions or the band you'd like to play. And we do honestly love it. It helps inform what we do going into the future. Otherwise, I think for a Friday night, at least in Australia land, we might leave it there, Paul.
Yeah, how did I go? Did I follow my own guidelines? Not saying anything too stupid.
No, I think you did well. I think, and so just again to pull the curtain back, because this is our first live stream, the software we use doesn't have a virtual background. So I, at 4:30 this afternoon, was at Spotlight, which Australians will know, but for those outside of Australia, it's a fabric and haberdashery store, badly buying black material to throw over my green screen. So it looked like I had a professional. And Paul has his Mr. Squiggle set up. Again, if you outside of Australia, you won't know Mr. Squiggle, but Aussies will appreciate it. I just reckon next time if you get that pencil on the nose and draw, we're set.
Done, Miss Jane.
Oh, I asked for that. So look, thank you all for joining. It's been an absolute pleasure. We'll see you back for the podcast, and we'll hopefully make these relatively regular. They certainly won't be weekly because Paul alone is in 6 bands and I'm in 3. So we do play a lot of gigs.
And that's actually not that much of an exaggeration. That's the scary thing.
Well, that's right.
But can I say this? Whether you're listening live or whether you're listening to this subsequently and watching it on YouTube later, if this is something that you would like to see more of, and there's things you'd like us to explore, just make a comment and we'll do it. Or you want us to never do it again? Tell us that too.
That's right. No.
We can't promise that we'll obey you, but you can certainly give us any feedback you like, and make it interesting. Hopefully, it's been interactive enough. I think there's been some good questions there.
No, great question. So thanks to all of you that turned up for this first one. We will put some links in the show notes for those watching it after the fact, so that some of the things we talk about you can just click on directly. But yeah, and really appreciate you taking part, and we'll be back soon. Let's aim for at least 1, if not 2 more before Christmas, Paul.
Oh, okay. That sounds like fun. Let's do it.
Yeah, but between your 6 bands, I think we should be able to fit 1 in at least.
I'll be right.
Different, and we'll try and even do some time zone stuff. So we might do one on a weekend during the day.
Yeah, maybe we should do some at a time.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really hard for most of our, and we love our Aussie friends, of course, but most of our listeners actually come from North America, don't they,
Yeah.
David? And the UK. So we probably need to help them out a bit and pick some different times. It's a bit hard.
I mean, a lot of our listeners are just Ben Montench endlessly promotes our podcast and says for people to listen to it. So that's why I'm confident it'll come on. I wish. All right, thank you, and thanks Gino for that kind comment, and David as well. Really appreciate it, and we'll be back soon.
Thanks, guys and gals. Bye.
Bye. Right.